Thank you all for being here today. And just before we begin, I do just want to go over a few quick housekeeping notes. For those of you who don't know, my name is Angel. I'm a Masters of Counselling student, and this is essentially what I'm doing, not for university purposes, but it's just because it's something that I'm very passionate about. So today's session will be recorded for educational purposes. Your faces will not be included in the final recording. Of course, if you want to share something throughout the session and you don't want that to be included in the final recording, please just let me know at the end and I will, of course, not include it. So lastly, we will be discussing mental health. So if at any point you do feel overwhelmed or uneasy, you're free to hop out, take a breather, or you can just leave entirely. It's up to you. You need to take care of you and your well-being, and that's all that matters, right? So before we begin, or we'll begin in just a moment, but I just want to ask you something. And you don't need to answer out loud. I just want you to ask you quietly within yourself. Have you ever found yourself in one of those moments where everything on the outside seems fine and still, but inside your mind, it's just racing. There's just racing thoughts everywhere. Maybe it's a memory that keeps replaying. Maybe it's a worry that just loops itself over and over again. And maybe a need to check, a need to prepare, a need to scan for what might go wrong. And no matter how hard you try to calm down, your mind just gets louder. So raise your hand if you've ever felt like that before, or maybe raise your hand if you've maybe doing that now. So if that's all, you, first of all, welcome. You are not broken. This is not a flaw. It is a form of protection. It is not a failure. It is your adaptation to the situation. And it is not a weakness. It is actually a form of wisdom in disguise. So you've simply adapted so brilliantly to a nervous system that just has not felt safe. And in this space, you are safe. And so what if the one thing that you have been fighting, the overwhelm, the anxiety, is actually a signal that you've been waiting for to finally stop that loop? Today, we're not just going to talk about how to manage anxiety. We are going to decode it. We're going to go through the neuroscience. We're going to go through the trauma patterns, the inner voices, the protective parts that create your personal anxiety loop. And we're going to look at it not as a disorder, but like a language that you've never been taught how to understand. And by the end of this hour, I hope that you'll leave with tools, yes, but perhaps more importantly, you may walk away seeing your mind differently than you ever have before. A way of seeing yourself not as a problem to fix, but as a person who adapted brilliantly to a nervous system that never felt safe. So we'll explore the psychology, the biology, the story behind the spiral, and learn how to speak its language. And there's one question I'll leave you with at the end, at the end of this hour, and it's changed how so many people relate to their anxiety. But we'll come back to that. So for now, just take a breath, get comfortable however you need, grab a handout, and let's just begin untangling the anxious mind. And as you listen to this, you might begin, and I hope that something begins to soften inside. Now first, let's get clear on what we're actually dealing with. The word anxiety gets tossed around for a dozen different experiences. But what if I told you not all of them are actually anxiety? So let's break this down simply. We have stress, which is a physical or emotional response to an external pressure, demand, or threat, and it's often short-term. Then we have worry, which is a cognitive or a mental rehearsal of future what-if scenarios, and is usually done in order to kind of gain control. Then we actually have anxiety, which is a body-based sense of unease without any sort of obvious or immediate threat. Then we have overthinking, which is a cognitive looping of repetitive thoughts trying to prepare, prevent, or predict everything and anything. And it usually comes with negative outcomes. And then we have rumination, which is a persistent focus on replaying past events, often with the feelings of guilt or regret. Now, if you notice something, these all feel similar in the body, but they don't come from the same place. Has anyone ever said, like, I have anxiety, when really you were just overwhelmed or stressed? It's okay. We all do it. It's very normal. But just raise your hand if you've ever just mixed any of these up within yourself. Perfect. Completely normal. I have done it many times as well. Now, here's something wild from neuroscience. Overthinking often activates a part of the brain called the default mode network. Now, this network kicks in when you're not particularly doing anything. You're still, you're in your own thoughts, you're introspecting, and your mind's just wandering. And this default mode network loves to loop the same old patterns, the same old fears, the same old doubts, the same old imagined disasters. And for those who experience anxiety often, this network becomes hyperactive, sustaining looping thought patterns and reinforcing your fear-based narratives. But here's the key. Your brain is not doing this to hurt you. It is and it's not doing this to self-sabotage you either. It is trying to protect you. It is whispering, if I can just think through every outcome, then maybe you'll finally be safe. From an evolutionary standpoint, overthinking and anxiety may have been very advantageous. It helped you to anticipate threats and prepare your responses. Useful in old times where your body needed to basically get ready to fight or run when you're facing danger, like if you're being chased by a bear. However, now your body thinks you're constantly about to fight a bear when you're just going about your everyday life. Your brain is not broken. It is brilliant. It's just doing too much of a good thing. It's over-analyzing to keep you safe. It is loyal to a fault, not flawed. It is simply a survival strategy. And this reframes anxiety as an excessive pattern recognition, but without the presence of any immediate danger. From a psychological perspective, anxiety is often linked to earlier experiences where we didn't feel safe or in control. Maybe your household was chaotic. Maybe love felt conditional. Or maybe you just learnt to always be on alert. Children who were raised in unpredictable, emotionally unavailable, or high-stress environments are more likely to develop hypervigilant styles, cognitive styles, and anxious attachment patterns. And so now, in this time, these protective patterns can persist even in safe environments. Your inner system just keeps scanning for danger where there is none. But there is another layer to this that we need to talk about, which is cognitive distortions. Now, these are automatic, often unconscious thinking styles that twist how we perceive things. CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, teaches us that certain mental habits, like catastrophizing, black and white thinking, or mind reading, they don't just reflect anxiety, they reinforce it. They take a tiny, small trigger and blow it completely out of proportion. So now you're not just anxious because of what's happening, you're anxious because of how you're interpreting what's happening. One of the most overlooked roots of anxiety lies in the earliest blueprint we have of relationships. Attachment theory tells us that our earliest relationships, especially with our primary caregivers, taught us something crucial. Is the world safe? Can I depend on others? Am I allowed to have needs? If you learnt that love could be withdrawn, your nervous system likely learned to stay on high alert. And then as adults, it shows up in sneaky ways. Overchecking, second guessing, approval seeking, and looping thoughts that just feel endless. So when your adult brain is spiraling, did I say something wrong? Why haven't they texted back? It's not just insecurity. It's a patented response rooted in your early survival. Has anyone ever texted someone and then spiraled when they didn't respond? I've done it. It's not just insecurity. It's your nervous system remembering something old. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, a psychiatrist with expertise in trauma, describes this as the body keeps the score. You may have heard of that book. I have it up there as well. Even when it's over, your body doesn't always know that. Experienced trauma causes the body to become trapped in a state of defense, long after the actual event has passed. Some common responses, common in trauma, are hyperarousal, hypervigilance, and somatic flashbacks. The body doesn't just remember what happened. It prepares to prevent it from happening again. This creates a familiar pattern I call learned unsafety, where your body gets stuck in yesterday's alarm system. So now we know, anxiety doesn't just come from out of nowhere. It's often a combined result of early patterns, trauma, distorted thinking, and your brain just trying to predict pain. It's not random. It is remembered. It is not weakness. It is wisdom without an update. And it's not sabotage. It's simply your safety system that's running on autopilot. So we can come to understand and acknowledge your anxiety as intelligent. It remembers what hurt. It tries to prevent it from happening again. And it adapts, but it doesn't always update. It's not as high tech as our phones or computers. It's not going to automatically update. We have to manually press that update button, and it's not always easy, and it's not always comfortable. And I want to share a story to kind of help. Well, it was one thing that I understood, how I learnt to feel how the body forgets, or the body remembers what the mind forgets. When I was 7, I was an absolute social butterfly, always chatting, always playing. And at the end of the school year, we had a swimming carnival. If you remember those, went to school, massive fun with friends, on water slides, playing in the water, good time. Now, I had a close friend at the time, and I'll call him Nick for the sake of his confidentiality. We played every day at school. Tag, sports, you name it, make believe. So here we were at the pool in the kids area, and the water was about up to here on me, so I was barely able to touch the ground. And out of nowhere, Nick pushes me under and sits on my head. And of course, I'm flailing, I'm panicking, trying to push him off, desperate for air. I eventually get free and I run to the teacher, who escorts Nick out of the pool. And needless to say, we did not stay friends after that. And I thought that was the end of it. Now, 5 years later, I'm taking a shower, and all of a sudden, my breathing picks up. I'm starting to hyperventilate, my heart rate's going up, and I'm starting to lose consciousness, and I sit down, and I yell out for my parents, who come rushing in to help me. And that moment became the first of many sudden anxiety attacks that were all triggered by showering, or water in this case. And from that point on, I could not shower alone. One of my parents had to be in the bathroom with me at all times, just in case. And we were all confused. There was no clear reason until later, after working with a therapist, we traced it back to that moment in the pool with Nick. And then we worked through that in depth. My body had remembered something that my mind had buried. And only once I connected to the dots and consciously worked through it over time, could that healing begin. The anxiety stopped once I understood and actually worked on exactly what my mind was trying to protect me from. So that's what I mean when I say your anxiety might not be irrational. It may just be intelligent, but outdated. A brilliant system that's running on yesterday's alarm system. Because here's the truth. You actually rarely think your way into anxiety. You feel your way in. And sometimes, without even noticing, you stay there. So let's start with the amygdala. So it's a part of your brain that controls your fear and anxiety responses. Essentially, it's like your inner smoke alarm. And it doesn't ask questions, it just sounds the alarm. Doesn't matter what. And the moment it senses danger, real or imagined, it fires off red signals. And this floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline, and your heart races, your muscles tighten, your digestion slows down, and your logical thoughts, gone, out the window, nowhere to be seen. And in a split second, your brain switches from clarity to chaos, from planning to panicking, and from presence to protection. This is what psychologists call an amygdala hijack. It's basically your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that helps you make good decisions, gets temporarily just shut down. Has anyone ever walked into a room and forgotten why you walked in there? Perfect. Imagine trying to solve your biggest fears in that state. That's survival mode. Now, who here has heard of fight or flight? Perfect. So, let me introduce you to something even more powerful, and this is the polyvagal theory developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. It gives us a kind of roadmap for understanding why we feel how we feel. Now, most people think that the nervous system only flips between fight, flight, or freeze, but there is more. Your autonomic nervous system operates like a ladder with 3 rungs. So we have your rest and digest, you're safe and social, where you're relaxed, you're grounded, and you're connected. Then we have mobilized, fight or flight, you're anxious, alert, overwhelmed. And then we have shut down, which is freeze, where you go numb, you disassociate, and you become withdrawn. And let me explain it this way. Imagine a deer that's being chased by a lion. It's running. It's in mobilization mode. The sympathetic nervous system is flooding the body with adrenaline, speeding up the heart rate, tightening the muscles, increasing breath rate. But when escape is no longer an option for the deer, it freezes. It collapses like it's already gone. Because disassociation is the body's last resort. Well, that's useful. And that freeze state is basically the shutdown response. So in everyday life, we're actually meant to fluctuate between these 2 states, between doing and digesting. But anxiety traps us and locks us into this state of prolonged arousal, keeping the sympathetic system switched on. And when your brain says danger, even when there is none. And over time, that arousal just becomes too much to bear, and then you freeze. Not out of laziness, but because your nervous system has just hit capacity. It just cannot go any higher. Like a computer browser you've had too many things open and it just shuts down. That's essentially what's happening in your body. And then there's another piece that people often miss, which is interoception. It's your brain's ability to detect body signals like your heartbeat, your breath, and your gut sensations. Now, in anxiety, your internal radar gets completely scrambled. The body sends real signals, but the brain misreads and misinterprets the meaning. Any normal heartbeat fluctuations can be read as impeding panic. Muscle tension can be felt as just a complete meltdown. Any sort of stomach discomfort could be seen as a threat that's coming towards you. You feel something, then you fear that feeling, and then that fear becomes the trigger. And this creates the loop. A sensation arises, for example, a tight chest. The brain flags it as dangerous. And then your stress response increases. More sensation occurs, and then your interpretation of it just escalates. The sensation becomes a thought. The thought fuels that sensation. And around it goes. This loop is definitely more intensive if you're sleep deprived, if you carry trauma, or have insecure attachments, or high sensitivity to threat. Over time, your brain starts to actually expect danger, even in calm moments. But there is good news. You can interrupt this loop. We'll get to things later, but there are some breathing techniques, some grounding and body-based practices that can signal to your system that you are safe now. It's okay to come back down. So now that we've mapped the loop, how do we break it? Until now, we've explored anxiety as a loop, a pattern, a system. But now, let's turn inward, into the world beneath the thoughts, the part that most people never see. So Carl Jung believed that the parts of ourselves that we disown, the fears, the flaws, the not good enoughs, they don't vanish. They hide, and they wait. And they speak to us in the forms of the symptoms that we experience. They go underground, into what he called the shadow. When we don't acknowledge those parts of ourselves, they'll find ways to speak to us anyway. Through anxiety, intrusive thoughts, dreams, projection, panic. So that anxious voice, the key is to finally start listening to it. And what we may have pushed down and ignored within ourselves. And Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor and author of Search of Meaning, this book here, once said that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose. And in our choice is our growth and freedom. So after hearing that, maybe that anxious energy isn't a flaw or a problem to fix, but simply a message, a protest from something deeper, reminding you that something needs to shift. Now, narrative therapy invites us to see that we are not the problem. The problem is the problem. By naming anxiety as an experience rather than an identity, calling it the worry voice or the inner alarm, you can gain distance from it and agency. For example, you are not an anxious person. You're a person who learnt to overthink to feel safe. That's different. Can you feel how different that lands? It's not who you are. It's how you've coped. It's not your personality. It's your adaptation. And it's not a flaw. It's your system simply doing its best. And this shift helps you step outside that anxious identity and say, this is a pattern I developed, but it is not who I am. So let's finally move on to the tools. I know you've been waiting for this. So the first layer we have is cognitive tools. It's your thinking patterns. Now these tools help you rise above the spiral so you can lay down new tracks and finally start going in your direction again. So we have the first one is the ABCDE method. This is a classic CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy tool. And it's still one of the most powerful yet gentle ways to challenge a stressful thought. So what we do, the activating event. So that's the situation or trigger that is causing you to feel that way. And then B, what is your belief about that event or situation? C, the consequence, what that makes you feel. D, dispute. So we want to gently dispute that belief any way we can. And then E, create an effective new belief in its place. So for an example, the activating event, my friend didn't text me back. Now what's your belief? She's mad at me. She hates me. She never wants to talk to me again. I've done something wrong. And what's the consequence of that? You feel anxious. You feel guilty. You start overthinking and feel overwhelmed. Now, how could you dispute that? You could say, could she be busy? Is there actual proof that she's mad at me or I've done something wrong? And then an effective new belief. There are many reasons why someone might not reply quickly. I can always circle back and check in later without needing to spiral right now. And then we have thought tracking, which is another method of simply noticing your thoughts. You don't need to fix them. Just notice them and write them down. And this builds awareness and metacognition. Let's just pause for a moment. You can write down if you want to. I do have it in the booklets, a section for this. But you can just bring to mind just one thought that you feel like just loops in your head more often than you would probably like it to. You don't have to fix it, just notice it. And then ask, is it true? What evidence supports it? And what evidence refutes it? Would I say this to someone I genuinely care about? This fosters the ability to observe your thoughts rather than become them. And then we have somatic, so that is body level tools. Sometimes though, because your thoughts can sometimes just be like on a runaway train and you're never going to be able to catch up to that. So instead, we try to speak the language of the body, because anxiety lives in your nervous system, not in your logic center. So we have the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. Then we can try this one now if you'd like. It's really simple, but an incredibly powerful reset that you don't even need to, that you can do it at any sort of setting as well. So all you need to do is just notice 5 things that you see. Could be in this room, could be outside of the room. Yeah, a plethora of things outside as well. Just notice 5 things that you can see. And then 4 things that you can touch or feel. Could be the chair beneath you, your clothes, the ground, paper, pen, phone, whatever it is. And then 3 things that you can hear. The hum of the projector, cars going by in the background, me talking, your own breath. And then 2 things that you can smell. Bit of a dusty room, maybe someone's perfume. And then 1 thing that you can taste or imagine tasting. Favorite dessert. An old recipe from home. And this resets your focus from spiraling thoughts to grounded presence. The only moment where safety truly exists now. And then we have vagal toning tools. So the recording cut out, so we're just including that little part that was missed. And so we talked about the vagal toning tools. Now, who here would love to basically signal to the body at any point in time that it is safe and have it actually listen, right? So to do that, we're going to make use of the vagus nerve, which is essentially like your inner calming switch. So what you can do, you can hum or chant. Now this stimulates the vagus nerve via your vocal cords. You can also splash cold water on your face, and this triggers your dive reflex and resets your vagal tone. Then we also have slow exhalations, and this extends your parasympathetic state and lowers your heart rate variability. Then we also have gentle rocking or swaying, which mimic your early soothing rhythms and calms your vestibular system. Now, these all work without having to think. You don't need to figure it all out. You just need to remind your body that it's safe. You can also scan your body for where your anxiety lives. So it's a practice where your attention goes from head to your toes, noticing any tension or sensation without judgment. This encourages interoceptive awareness and promotes downregulation through attentional anchoring and breath. Lastly, we have lifestyle and environmental tools. Now, let's name a few of those silent saboteurs of your nervous system's peace and what we can actually do about them. Because anxiety thrives in overstimulated environments. So That's your screens. It's your phones, computers, it's caffeines, it's noise, it's clutter, it's notifications. These are all stresses that can add up over time. And our modern environments bombard our nervous systems with novelty and demand all the time. So it's excess screen time, which basically is causing dopaminergic overhaul and disrupts your sleep and can also lower your attention spans. Caffeine and other stimulants increase your baseline arousal and any jitteriness as well. Watching the news or doom scrolling keeps your mind anticipating threat. And multitasking actually fractures your executive functioning and heightens your cortisol levels. So what can we do about them? Well, we can create tech-free wind-down windows before bed. We can replace scrolling with a single point focus, for example, your breath or a candlelight or journaling. Then also you can just stick to one task at a time where possible. Small things like caffeine, like doom scrolling, these all add up. They're like background noise, essentially, for your nervous system, a low hum of tension. So ask yourself, where in your day can you turn even just one of these down just a little bit? Now, who here has heard of sleep hygiene? Good. So we're going to go a little bit broader and we're going to talk about nervous system hygiene. You were probably already thinking about sleep hygiene when I mentioned the screen-free wind down time before bed. But we're going to look at nervous system hygiene now. What would that look like? So it could look like limiting time with high conflict or emotionally dysregulating people, decluttering your environments, or scheduling decompression time between your daily responsibilities. Nervous system hygiene means designing your world to feel safe. Just as we monitor food for our physical health, we need to monitor people and inputs for our mental health. So, we've explored tools, science, and deep psychology. But now it's time for a shift. A reframe, the kind that doesn't just change your mind, but your relationship with it. I've already alluded to this before, but anxiety is not your enemy. It's a message. A whisper from something deep inside, just pointing to something that's misaligned, unseen, or long been suppressed. We try to silence it. We try to escape it. We try to outsmart it. But what if the part of you that overthinks, that spirals, is simply trying to just be heard? The first reframe is from seeing it from a flaw to a function. Anxiety serves a purpose, even when its expression is maladaptive. Anxiety is not weakness. It is sensitivity without safety. It's a hyper-alert system that hasn't yet learnt that you are safe. Overthinking, it's not a weakness. It's your mind's way of saying, I'm scared of being caught off guard. It's not sabotage. It's a strategy. And it's not a dysfunction. It's a defense. And it's not panic. It's a plea to be safe. Overthinking is basically mental preparation, which is rooted in your survival. Panic is unprocessed fear, just seeking any sort of discharge. Avoidance is a protective withdrawal from perceived threats. Now, these responses are not irrational. They're outdated strategies applied to present moments. And what feels like sabotage is often self-protection in disguise. The second reframe is from suppression to curiosity. Anxiety is that part of you, and it's loyal, it is tireless, and it's been trying to prevent pain in the only way it knows how. You can fight your anxiety, or you can ask it questions. So let me ask, and you don't have to answer out loud, but maybe just notice what comes up when I ask you these. And these are basically what you would ask your anxiety. What do you need right now? What are you trying to stop from happening? What younger part of me are you protecting? What would happen right now if you didn't do this job of protecting? And the last reframe is from management to meaning. Viktor Frankl once said that an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is a normal reaction. What if the anxiety is the tension between who you are and who you've been told to be? Maybe it's not a dysfunction, and it's actually growth. And your job isn't to snuff it out, but to listen to what it's actually calling you toward. Now, this isn't about never feeling anxious again. It's about transforming your relationship with that part of you so it doesn't run the show anymore. And transformation rarely happens through information alone. It settles in when you experience yourself in a new and different way. So I want to guide you through a practice on how to help this really land, not just in your mind, but in your body. So if you wanted to, if you have a pen with you, turn to page 6, which is actually the back page of your handout. If you don't have it, completely fine. We'll do it just internally, and you can do it later at a different date. So I invite you to either just write down if you have a pen, or just close your eyes if you prefer, and we'll just write a letter, either physically or mentally, to your anxiety. And not from a place of fear, but from the wiser part of you, the part that remembers that you're safe. So you're going to say, "Dear anxiety, I see you show up when I know you're trying to protect me from, and I want you to know now that I'm safe, I'm resourced, and I'm listening." Does anyone want to share anything that came up? It's only an invitation, absolutely no pressure to it all. Because what I want to try to get at as well is that change doesn't just happen and stick because it's understood. It sticks because it's practiced and felt. So that's also what these exercises are about. So we are almost at the end now, and I want to leave you with something that I hope you're never going to forget. You are not broken. You are a human trying to survive in a world that didn't always feel safe, with a mind that has been trying to protect you all along. And that mind, it's extremely powerful, but you are so much more. You are breath. You are body. You are presence. You are power. And you are choice. Earlier, I told you that there was one question that's changed how so many people relate to their anxiety. And here it is. It is simple, but incredibly powerful. What part of me needs love right now? And ask it not just in a state of crisis, but in the quiet. What part of me needs love right now? Ask it when you feel stuck. Ask it when you feel numb. What part of me needs love right now? Just ask that and breathe. You might hear something softer than your fear, something deeper, still whispering, "I just want to heal." Thank you everyone for today. There's going to be a QR code on the back of your handouts. It links to a free guided breathwork audio that I've created just for you. You can use it anytime you feel overwhelmed. It is my gift to you for coming today. And if this resonated, feel free to stay connected. I will be running these monthly on every third Wednesday. It's going to be on different topics, and I'd love to keep supporting your growth. So thank you all so much for coming today. Thank you.